You have an interesting background because you actually own a Jazzercise franchise, which maybe you can tell people what that is. I think that's pertinent to our conversation because you had to sell to build your business.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, this was back in the 80s when the fitness craze was just getting started. So think of Jane Fonda, and then Jazzercise came about. And I will tell you, that was probably one of my first role models in business because Judy Shepherd Miss built one of the largest fitness businesses in the world at that time. And it still might be, now you've got Life Fitness and all that. But yeah, it was a great way to start. And I remember I knew nothing about getting people into a gymnasium. So I remember hiring these little boys to hand out flyers that were hanging out my car window. We're stuffing into mailboxes. I'm pretty sure it was illegal. So I hope I don't get arrested from this interview. But, slowly but surely started filling those gyms with 80 and 100 people.
What gave you the drive to be successful in that?
Well, I was fortunate, as you know, mentorship is something I'm really preaching these days. And when I was in high school, we had a very, very, I'm going to say, instrumental teacher come into our lives, Jan Gruber. And I grew up in this farming community of 900. So she decided we're going to have this dance team, drill team. And I'm telling you, we don't have a dance studio. Most of us haven't taken dance lessons. And she went on to make us an award-winning drill team. And so I think that planted the seed for the love of dance. It actually planted the seed for teaching others because we would run clinics in our little small town, invite other high schools there. So, not only were we learning, how to be great dancers, we were learning how to be capitalists at that time too. That was our fundraising effort. If you take a look at dancers, drill team, cheerleading, which we'll probably talk about today, they are athletes and it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of practice. And so I think those are some seeds that really got planted in me in my early years. So I've always been really grateful for that because, if you take a look, and Lori, I know you've been a teacher and instructor and speaker for years, it takes a lot of role play, it takes a lot of rehearsal, it takes a lot of planning. And that all got embedded in me when I was at the age of 14 by Jan Gruber.
Wow, that's incredible. And
Yeah, it is.
then you ended up getting into sales in the cheer world, right? Tell us.
Yes. So if you want to look up the word serendipitous, my picture should be right beside it. And I was working for a Jostens rep, actually my ex-husband. And so this is the serendipitous part. His boss comes down from Minneapolis and he takes us out to lunch and he said, "Hey, you guys need to look into this little company. They're starting to build out their first sales force, Varsity Spirit Corporation." And so Varsity today is the largest in the world in their industry. They own School Spirit. And at that time, what he was talking about was the cheerleading and dance apparel business, as well as the cheerleading and dance instruction business. And so I kept calling them all summer and nobody was answering the phone. And finally, somebody returned my call. So they flew out, interviewed me, and I became a member of their first sales team that they built out in the apparel side of the business. So it was a great opportunity. I will tell you, when we got together, and I'm a big believer in holding regional meetings and national sales meetings, we made those meetings really fun. And I'm not sure if I see enough of that sometimes in today's national sales meetings, but I'll give you a quick example. So one year, and again, we're building, we're growing, and we had a distributor that fell behind in the delivery of their product. So we were, technically we're a distributor and manufacturer. So the reps are coming in, and I know they're probably not in a great mood because they had been, dealing with upset customers all summer. So I delivered this keynote on attitude. That is the only thing you can control, right? And then I said, "Now we feel so good about attitude. We have brought in someone to sing the song of attitude." And I had a rep that could sing like a bird. She comes out in this wig, shiny dress, and she's acting like she's Patti LaBelle. And she's singing, "I Got a New Attitude." And right behind her, I made all my regional sales managers, they were like the backup band dancing. And the reps are sitting there going, "Who is this? Who is this?" And I'm telling you, when they figured out it was their regional managers, it brought down the house. And so, the temperature lowered, we're going to have fun. And so, yeah, we worked hard and we played hard.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self looking back?
gosh, what would you, more sleep? At the same time, I had so much energy, it just didn't matter. I would say read more. And I've always been a pretty good reader. Today, I'm a voracious reader, but I would say read more. I always had good mentors. The mentors found me, and I always kind of wonder what would have happened if I'd been more proactive about seeking out mentors. So I would say those two. I would have to say I've always been pretty fearless. I bounce back from adversity pretty quick. And so those are probably the two I tell my 20-year-old self.
And your latest book is about mentorship.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, it is titled Be the Mentor Who Mattered. And it's really to, number one, honor the many great mentors I had, but also, Lori, and I know you've been a mentor to many and have had some great mentors. I really believe it's more important than ever now because the pace of change is fast. We've got some unintended consequences of technology and remote work. There's a little bit of a breakdown in the community. And this is why we have so many people that have a lot of anxiety, depression, and feeling isolated. And so it's not a book about how to find a mentor. I think it's up to us to be great mentors and seek out people who need help. And that's what I think is great about this event that you're putting on. I remember when I was working for Sandler and the franchisee was Gary Harvey, and he was going off to close, I think it was $100,000 training engagement. He's back at the office in a half hour. And I said, what happened? Turns out the company has decided. And I looked at him and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I would have lost a week to despair, right? And he looked at me and he said, some will, some won't, moving on. And he just moved on. And so right there, I was like, wow, that's adversity at its finest. And I'm sure he was disappointed. Maybe he showed more of it when he got home, but some will, some won't, move. I have to tell you, for myself, it's been great because it is a pay-for-performance business. You can be very creative in how you go about getting sales. So I know when I first started in sales way back at Varsity, I wasn't that good, but you know what I was good at? Was creating events. So I would have wine and cheese parties for the cheerleading coaches, or I would host cheerleading competitions. And so you can be creative. I would also say for women that are looking to get in sales, look in those industries that you may not even think about, like manufacturing and distribution. And I know, Lori, you've worked a lot in those areas. And they may look like they're very male dominated or they're not real sexy. Let me tell you, they're industries that you can make good money. They are highly relationship oriented, which I love. And so look at some of the industries that you wouldn't even think about considering. And the final point I would make, and maybe this is not quite in line with what you asked, find something that you're passionate about. I think that's the reason I've always been blessed to enjoy my work, is I've always been passionate about whatever I'm doing. And it doesn't mean that your product or service is saving the world, but you know where? Like, even if you're selling something that helps offices run, well, guess what? That's feeding families. That's keeping a business owner in business, who then in turn is keeping, 20 families supplied with income. And so I think passion is a great thing to have in the product and service you're selling. When I was a vice president of sales, I had 7 regional managers reporting to me, 5 of which were women. And so after we'd get done with the day of meetings, the guys would go off and golf and we were like, bye. And then the 5 women, we would go walking. And I remember for some reason, it must have been close to our corporate office, but there was a cemetery right across from the hotel that they stayed at. And I can't tell you how many times we just enjoyed these walks through this cemetery, and we were talking business, we were talking family and friends. And so it was always amazing to me that we could do business. I mean, I could hold people accountable, and yet we all really developed good friendships. And I think that was a little bit magical and fortunate for me. And these were not, frankly, I wasn't managing these folks. They were leaders. And you have to be when you're in a startup and a fast growth. And they all brought individual talents. Like, one was really good at setting up special events. Angie had such a servant's heart. Patty was she was what I call my all-weather manager. And, I say there's a fair weather manager and an all-weather manager. Sure. Fair weather, they're good when it's sunny and everything's happy. And then when a problem comes, you got two problems, right? That problem and then their attitude. Well, Patty was one of these that was just steady. And if a problem came up, she'd call you, she'd tell you about it. Think you need to go address it. Here's how we're going to handle it on our end. And you talk about a mentor. She was a mentor to me, and technically I was her boss. But again, I didn't have to lead a lot of these folks because they were good at self leadership. And so I
wonder-
was really fortunate.